Good evening, Lighthouse Baptist Church. Good to have you here tonight. And friends that are joining us all over the world, we're glad to hear. I'm here with my youngest son, Chandler, and he wants to play for you. Can you play something for us? Go for it. That's good. Come on now. What are you playing?
Monkey one.
A monkey one, okay. Go ahead. Play it now. This is my 2-year-old son. Chandler has been dying to play harmonica for you all today. Look at him go. He's a savant. Or not, perhaps. You ready? Jesus loves me. Are you singing it? Right there. Oh, right there. Okay. Okay, are you done? Go ahead, take a bow. Take a bow. Say thank you. There you go. Thank you. Say bye-bye. Say bye-bye, everybody. Bye. Thank you. Go ahead and take him. There you go. Hey, we're good to have you here tonight. Glad to have you here tonight. Thank you for coming online and getting here with us and being a part of what God is doing through this Lighthouse Baptist Church online service on unusual circumstances, unusual days. We're so glad that you could be a part of what's going on here. Let's go ahead and open with a word of prayer tonight. Father, thank you for this wonderful day. Thank you for many blessings. Thank you for what you're doing. Lord, I pray that you would continue to work in hearts and lives to guide and direct. Father, I pray that you would use the time here together to glorify and uplift you. Pray that you would just work in hearts. In Jesus' name, amen. So glad to have you again tonight. My wife will be giving some announcements later about things going on. Continue to pray for the Bowen family, Joey, and others that are struggling. As we get going this evening, go ahead and grab your phone, text somebody, call somebody, as Brother Joe comes and leads us in a song.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor. Let's start off tonight with Rescue the Perishing. Rescue the perishing, care for the dying, snatch them in pity from sin and the grave. Weep for the erring one, lift up the fallen, tell them of Jesus the mighty to save. Rescue the perishing, care for the dying, Jesus is merciful, Jesus will save. Rescue the perishing, duty demands it. Strength for your labor, the Lord will provide. Back to the narrow way, patiently win them. Tell the poor wanderer, Savior has died. Rescue the perishing, care for the dying. Jesus is merciful, Jesus will save. Yes, amen.
Hey, before Brother Joe comes back and leads us in another song, I want to ask you a couple of questions and see if I can get a straight answer from you. How many of you, perhaps in junior high, played that little game, Truth or Dare? Now, some of you, I know you did, you played that game, Truth or Dare. You know, the game where you have to decide whether you're man enough to take the daring or probably stupid act, or be bold enough to answer probably a difficult question. I have a feeling that a good portion of you out there played that game at least once in your life. Anybody? Anybody out there? I know you guys did. Did you know God played a game of Truth or Dare with his people? A game of Truth or Dare with his people. In fact, he's still at it today. He still is. It's a thrilling game, but it's an interesting game. That game happens in Malachi chapter 3, where God asks the question, will a man rob God? Then he answers it, and if we're withholding our tithes, then God presents the dare. He says, bring your tithes into the storehouse, into the church of God, and test, see what God does for you and in you. He dares us to obey his word and tithe. The truth is, the case is that whole passage in Malachi is surrounded by all kinds of different things, curses and difficulties. But if we take the dare and make it happen, our finances and our living is blessed. I promise. It's a promise from God. Truth or dare. It's the only place in the Bible where God really dares you to do something. Let me ask you this today. Will you choose truth or dare? Are you daring enough to take the challenge to bring your tithes? Today is the 5th of April, and today is the first of the month, and lots of things go on at the church. A lot of our missionaries get supported. A lot of the bills get paid, and I know it's a difficult time for everybody, but let's take God at His word, and when He dares us to do what He's called us to do, to give, it's already His. Let's do it. Maybe even right now. While Joe's singing this next song, go ahead right now, pause, and go online somewhere, go on www.mvlbc.com, and take that dare and do. I know things are difficult. I know a lot of you are struggling with jobs and downturns and unexpected things, but let's just take God at His word and see if He'll bless us by doing what He dared us to do. Joe, come lead us in another song.
Purify my heart, let me be as gold, and precious silver. Purify my heart, let me be as gold, pure gold, refiner's fire. My heart's one desire is to be holy, set apart for you, Lord. I choose to be holy, set apart for you, my Master, ready to do your will. Purify my heart, cleanse me from within, and make me holy. Purify my heart, cleanse me from my sin, deep within, refiner's fire. My heart's one desire is to be holy, set apart for you, Lord. I choose to be holy, set apart for you, my Master, ready to do your will. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come. His grace hath brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we no less day to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amen.
Amen. I sure appreciate that, Joe. Refiner's Fire. What a good song that is. Help us to be holy. What a good set apart. What a good time to be thinking about those things. And then that amazing grace. You can't go wrong with that good song. Let me do this and take a minute as you turn to Joshua chapter 10. Get your Bibles out, your apps out, whatever you're doing there. and Joshua chapter 10. We have been going through the book of Ecclesiastes. I'm going to pause just tonight and probably next week for Easter and pause and do some other things, but we'll get back to Ecclesiastes. But I wanted to pause and say a shout out to my mom and dad. They just told me that my mom and dad there in Colorado are listening and watching, and you guys stay safe. I love you and I miss you guys. We had planned to go out there in April and preach at the church that I grew up in and say hi to Brother Burkett for me, and good pastor out there in Cortez. I'm sure that church, Lighthouse Baptist Church there in Cortez, Colorado, is struggling with the same things we are. But we love you guys. We're praying for you, Mom and Dad. We miss you. And as soon as we can, we'll reschedule that trip to come out and see you guys. I'm grateful for good parents. Joshua chapter 10 and verse number 1. Joshua 10 and verse number 1. Now it came to pass when Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, had heard how Joshua had taken Ai and had utterly destroyed it, as he had done to Jericho and her king, so he had done to Ai and her king, and how the inhabitants of Gibeon had made peace with Israel and were among them, that they feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, as one of the royal cities, and because it was greater than Ai, and all the men thereof were mighty. Wherefore Adonizedek, king of Jerusalem, sent unto Horam, king of Hebron, and to Param, king of Jarmuth, and king of Jaffa, king of Lachish, and unto Deber, king of Eglon, saying, Come unto me, and help me, that we may smite Gibeon, for it hath made peace with Joshua and with the children of Israel. So you know the story, and we'll pause there for just a second. Joshua is taking over the land. He's come in, and Jericho, that whole story, Ai, and now we come to this interesting little passage here in verse number 5. I think we're at. Yeah, let's go into verse 6. And the men of Gibeon sent unto Joshua to the camp of Gilgal, saying, Slack not thy hand from thy servant. Come up to us quickly and save us and help us. For all the kings of the Amorites that dwell in the mountains are gathered together against us. It's interesting. All the kings are gathered against him. So Joshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. And the Lord said unto Joshua, Fear them not, for I have delivered them into the hand. There shall not be a man of them that stand before thee. Joshua therefore came unto them suddenly, and went up from Gilgal all night. I want to ask you tonight, how big is your God? How big is our God? The question really might be, how big is your concept of God? Is the God you serve big enough to perform miracles in your behalf, on your behalf? Or does your faith limit God and his ability to work in and through your life? How big is our God? You know, some days he's pretty big, and other days he's not big enough. And it all depends on my perspective and faith in him. Today, this event from the life of Israel gives us some important principles to remember. And I think some things that will help us in the days ahead. We need to remember that we will face opposition. I think we know that, but we need to remember that we will face opposition. Remember that the Gibeonites here had deceived their way into a treaty with Israel, thus saving their lives. But when the hill tribes heard of this, they looked on the Gibeonites as traitors, and quite understandably decided to move against them. But the same token, we who have chosen to follow Jesus Christ, we're a threat to those in sin, to those that deny Jesus Christ. And just like Israel, every one of us who wants to be faithful, a servant of Jesus Christ, is going to face some opposition. It's going to happen. Things are going to come in our way. Joshua 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We can read down through there. Well, let's read a couple of those verses actually. Verse number 2, they that feared greatly, because Gibeon was a great city, and as one of the royal cities. Verse number 3, all those kings come up against them. Verse number 4, and come up unto me and help. They want to smite Gibeah, for they have made peace with Joshua and with the children of Israel. So this is uneasy peace, a wrong alliance. These 5 kings in chapter 5 says it's going to happen. There's going to be this difficulty that's going to come up. Who knows what it is? There's going to be some things that are going to come in our life that are going to cause us to have some opposition. We've seen that in the days ahead, maybe not because of our Christianity, but it's going to happen. If you're going to walk with the Lord and you're going to obey the Word of God, there's going to be some things that are in conflict with this world. They're in conflict with the lay of the land, as it were. Some things that God says, do this, don't do that, be aware of this, don't make friends with them, He has some things laid out for us if we read the Word of God, and they're for our benefit, they're for our good, but they can cause conflict. And we need to be reminded that we will face opposition. Opposition is not new. Since the beginning of time, since the beginning of Genesis chapter 1 till today, there's been Christian opposition, and there's going to be Christian opposition. Even Jesus Christ, this morning we talked about the crucifixion, and Jesus was crucified. What did he do wrong? Well, he loved people, raised the dead, healed the sick, fed the multitude, and yet there was an opposition in Jesus' own life. There were some difficulties that came. We need to remember that there is going to be opposition. Number 2, we need to be reminded that commitments are only as good as they are backed up. We need to remember that commitments are only good if they are backed up. If they're backed up, we got to back those up. Let's look at verse 6 in chapter 10 here. Verse 6, chapter 10. All the men of Gibeon, sent unto Joshua to the camp of Gilgal, saying, here it is, slack not thy hand from thy servants. Come up to us quickly and save us and help us. For all the kings of the Amorites that dwell in the mountains are gathered together against us. So Joshua ascended from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. The Gibeonites quickly sent word to Joshua. They said, don't abandon us. Don't come to our rescue. We need help. We're here. We put ourselves in a bad situation. Come and get us. What would you have done? What would you have done? Would you have come and helped him? Had Joshua not been a man of principle, he could have used this way of escape from the consequences of this treaty. He could have ran away with it. He could have not helped him. After all, they had tricked him in this scenario, but Joshua did not think that way. He did not say that. He had this commitment in God's name. The Gibeonites had an intended honor to fulfill here. He was a man that was going to live by principle, not by the whim of the world. Even in this scenario where he was put in a bad spot, he still said, I'm going to do what's right. The days that we live in, the days ahead, we're going to have to decide, are we going to stay committed to what God has called us to do? Or we're going to do it even when it's right and the rest of the world is saying no. That day is here and is fast approaching. Look at verse 7. Joshua ascends from Gilgal, he and all the people of war with him, and all the mighty men of valor. He does it. He just is going to jump in there and run towards it and go do it. Oh, if men and women today still understood the value of giving their word and then standing behind it. Giving the word and then standing behind it. We need to back up our commitments. Some of us have made commitments, and we need to be committed, not wishy-washy about what we've said. We're going to do and be what God has called us to be. This evening, we're Christians. We need to be Christ-like. That's a commitment, to be like Christ. If there was ever a day where we need to be committed to what it means to be like Christ. Listen, we can't gather together in church houses, and that concerns me. The lack of commitment fades real quick. real quick. It's been said that you miss 2 services and it's easy to quit going to church altogether. Boy, we are already 3 weeks out, and who knows how longer. We need to be committed. Are we just doing religion? Are we just being a part of it? Are we going to stay and be faithful to the one who saved us, the one who loves us? Are we going to be committed to him? We need to remember that commitments are only good if they are backed up. We need to remember that we will face opposition. Thirdly, we need to be reminded that God is with us. God is with us. This is an incredible story. Look with me at verse 8. And the Lord said unto Joshua, fear them not, for I have delivered them into thine hand. There shall not a man of them stand before thee. What an amazing verse there. The Lord says right unto Joshua, don't be afraid. I've delivered them into your hand. There's not one of them is going to be standing before thee. The latter part of this this is a reassurance that he had already given to them, that he's going to do something. Joshua in chapter 1, verse 5, before the vision of Canaan began, but God often works in ways, in unveiling things that we didn't even know were going to happen, that they're laid out there. He's reaffirming this promise that he's going to do something. He's going to make this significant, this weird situation is going to take care of our present need. Armed with the command, this promise that God had given Joshua, Joshua leads these men into battle. They march, think about this, they march 25 miles from Gilgal to Gibeon under the cover of darkness. Now, how long does it take to march 25 miles? Well, it says all the men of war. That's a good group of men, and they're going to go down there. They covered the same distance, the Bible says. They covered this same distance in 8 to 10 hours that they had previously taken 3 days at a leisurely pace. 3 days, they did it in 8 to 10 hours. All night, these men of war got up, and they're motivated to go down and help and do. They had a commitment, a promise, and they're going to keep it, and they're going to get right on it. Joshua, after the long march to Gibeon, took the enemy completely by surprise. They just weren't expecting it at all. Verse number 9. Joshua, therefore, came unto them suddenly, 8 to 10 hours, and went up from Gilgal all night, and the Lord discomforted them. Look at this, verse 10. And the Lord discomforted them before Israel, and slew them with a great slaughter at Gibeon, and chased them away along the way that goeth up to Beth Horon, and smote them at Azekah, and unto Makkedah, I can't say that one. And it came to pass, as they fled from before Israel, and were in the going down of Beth Horon, and the Lord cast down great stones from heaven upon them unto Achaziah, and Azkiah, and they died. They were more which died with hailstones than they whom the children of Israel slew with the sword. I'm stumbling over my words tonight. Forgive me tonight. I even practiced this and making a mess of it. What I want you to notice is here that the Lord is doing the fighting. Did you notice that in verse 10? I butchered the verse, but did you notice that? It says, and the Lord discomforted them. Who? Joshua discomforted them? The men of war with Joshua? No, it says the Lord was doing the fighting. We are told that the Lord slew them. Look at verse 10. And then the Lord chased them, and the Lord smote them down. That's amazing to me that the Lord would do this. Think of the excitement of realizing that God is doing the fighting. That God is there working and moving and doing the fighting. We have all been decimated by the enemy, beat up by a circumstance, and wearied by obligations. How wonderful it would be if God came to our rescue, took up our cause, and defeated our enemies. Can he? He can. God fights for us too. If he were not constantly taking our side, listen to this, in the conflicts of life, we would already have been overwhelmed. We would have already been done long, long ago. Sin would have already defeated us and destroyed us. The last hint of our character would have been decimated. God is still fighting for his people. God is still fighting for his people, and part of the wonder of heaven will be to learn just how much he has been fighting for us in our lifetimes. Sometimes we don't even know how he's been protecting us, how he's been working in our lives, and we think, God, where are you? Why aren't you? And he is, and I look forward to that day when we go to heaven and we see the strings and strands of our life and how they've come together in the way that God planned it, and he was there all along. Perhaps already alarmed by the reports of Joshua's victory, when confronted in such a fashion, the Canaanite soldiers broke and they ran. They saw Joshua and those guys coming. They saw the problem and they ran, and Israel pursued after them. The terrain which they're on here, the soldiers are fleeing, it's a short distance, but it's a big drop. It's a downhill scenario, 700 feet in about 2 miles is what I've read. The Canaanites are fleeing down this pretty steep decline, and the Israelites are pursuing them, and God is doing the fighting, and he's intervening in their lives. And God sent this incredible thing. He sent a hailstorm that struck the already panicked soldiers and started making a mess of this group. There's 2 miracles really here recorded in this passage. Really the first, the hailstones, that God would allow this to happen. They're coming down on them, and then this hailstorm right on the enemy happens. Here the Lord is assisting the army of Joshua. They were weary from that all-night march, 25 miles. And now that they're here and they're ready to fight and they're starting to do some good things. Things are happening. The enemy is running, and God intervenes in this weather pattern, this amazing hailstorm. The casualties of the Canaanites from the hailstones, the Bible says, is incredible. Verse 11 continues with the report. There were more who died from the hailstones than the children of Israel had killed by the sword. Think about that. There's this commitment. There's Joshua's stayed to this commitment, and he runs down and is going after the Canaanites. And then God intervenes with this hailstorm and does an amazing thing. We need to be reminded that we will face opposition. We need to be reminded that commitments are only good if they are backed up. We've got to do what we've been called to do. We are Christians. Let's live and act like it. We need to be reminded that God is with us. He is with us. And then we need to be reminded that nothing is too great for God. This morning, I mentioned in the service this morning that I was just having a struggling morning, and the battle in my mind, I was losing it. And I'm thankful for my wife. There was encouragement. And I think I mentioned this morning, Brother Cedric McCormick called me and encouraged me. And I'm thankful for good friends that encourage you. But we can get in our heads about things, and we can lose the victory right here before it ever starts. But we need to be reminded that there's nothing too great for God. Nothing too great. And he goes on and proves it here in this passage. Picture the sight that must have awaited Joshua. He has crested the hill, the ridge, and looks down on this army. Before him, as far as he could see, there was a mass of the Canaanites and the panicked soldiers. His soldiers were pursuing them, and their own soldiers, and the battle was all over. And then these clouds come over the top and rain down this hail upon the enemy. What an amazing sight for Joshua to see God working in this way. Joshua must have realized two things. He had an unprecedented opportunity to destroy this alliance. God is giving us opportunities. Opportunities to witness. Opportunities to see Him glorified. Opportunities. I think right now in this season, we're planting. And I think in the days ahead, there could be a great harvest as we will reap that opportunity. Joshua is here and he's run down to his full stream. He's tired. He's wore out. He doesn't even want to honor this treaty. It's not a good deal, but he says, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be committed. I'm going to be the Christian I ought to be. He runs down there, and they start to get the victory. He comes over the ridge, and the Canaanites are running away from him, and he sees God's hand work and move and bring in this hailstones. Secondly, he realizes that they had this opportunity first. Secondly, he realizes there's not enough daylight. There's not enough daylight left in this day. Anybody ever been there? I can say, honestly, the last couple of days, weeks, there's not enough hours in the day. And I'm going, there's less to do, but there's more to do. How is that possible? And Joshua realizes he's got this victory at hand, this opportunity, and the daylight left here is not enough. So Joshua ran onto Facebook. Joshua went over to hire some more people to get help. Joshua went online and Googled to see what he could do. No, Joshua did what we often forget to do. But it was his first thought. He prayed. He prayed. He paused and prayed. Look at verse 12. Let's look at verse 12. Then spake Joshua to who? To the Lord, in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. Hey, God wants to give us an opportunity. He wants to give us the victory. There's nothing too great for Him, but we've got to pause and talk to Him. Right now, communication is difficult. We want to talk to people, and we want to be around people, and we're going to do this and this. And I'm thankful for technology and Zoom and Facebook and all these things that we're doing. But Jesus is easier to talk to than iPhone. Imagine that. I could talk to Him right now. We can get a hold of Him, and He has way more power over our lives and wants to give us the victory, and give us the opportunity. But we have to take the time and spend it with Him. Open our hearts and spend some time talking to Him. It says in verse 12, Then spake Joshua to the Lord in the day when the Lord delivered up the Amorites before the children of Israel. And he said, in the sight of Israel, think about that. Now that's faith. In the sight of everybody, Joshua says something. He's going to, in faith, pray this prayer. And he says, in sight of Israel, Son, stand thou still upon Gibeon, and thou moon in the valley of Ajalon. And the sun, look at that, and the sun stood still. Joshua prayed, how many words is that? 8, 10 words. And the sun stood still, and the moon stayed until the people had avenged themselves upon their enemies. Is not this written in the book of Jasher? So the sun stood still in the midst of heaven and hasted not to go down, about a whole day. Another 24 hours. In verse 12, Joshua commanded the sun and moon to stand still. Now, there's a lot of discussion about this miracle. The day the sun stood still. Just what does that mean? You can read it, lots of different opinions. You can read lots of commentaries. What did God do? Some maintain that it's just this poetic language. But I don't believe that. These words are not poetic, merely poetic imagery. Nor do I know how God did it. I don't know how God did it. How did God make the sun and the moon stand still? All I know is that one day in history, God intervened on behalf of His people and this leader, Joshua. God intervened. I don't believe that the earth stopped on its rotation or the sun or the moon actually stopped in their path, but I do know that somehow God prolonged the daylight to give Israel enough day to finish the battle. How does that work? I don't know how that God intervened. I know that he intervened and Israel fought and they got the victory. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty big God. That is a big God. How did he do it? I don't need to know how he did it. I know that he did it. I know that God is working. Perhaps the simplest answer is the answer of faith. God says through the prophet Jeremiah in Jeremiah 32:27, "Behold, I am the Lord, the God of all flesh. Is there anything too hard for me?" Amen. Is there anything too hard for God? Is there? Jeremiah reflected on the destruction of Jerusalem by Nebuchadnezzar and wrote in Lamentations 3:21, "This I recall to my mind, therefore have I hope. It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed by his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness." Those words in Lamentations draw the famous hymn, "Great is thy faithfulness, O God my Father." The chorus goes on, "Great is thy faithfulness, morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have need, thy hand has provided. Great." Come on, great. I wish you were right there tonight so we could sing it together. Great is thy faithfulness. You don't want me to sing it tonight, huh? Come on, some of you go ahead and sing it. I won't know it. It'll be all right. It'll be great in your family. Sing it. He is great. He's a big God. How does he do it? How does he work? I don't know. But I know that I know him, and I can talk to him, and he can do amazing things. We need to be reminded, lastly, of the power of prayer. The power of prayer. Verse 14 tells us the significance of this event. Look at verse 14. "And there was no day like that before it or after it, that the Lord hearkened unto the voice," look at this, "the voice of man, for the Lord fought for Israel." This day was unique for some unusual amount of daylight, but it's even more unique because God listened to a man's prayer. Does it strike you amazing that he, God of the universe, listens to the voice of our man and woman who comes to him? The God of the universe is listening to me. He's waiting for me to talk to him. And he wants to work and move in my life, do amazing things. The day was unique. While Joshua's long day was a miracle event, which has never been repeated again, God still hears and responds to the voice of man. He still responds to the cry of the needs and intervenes on our behalf, on the behalf of his children. As been said, God hearkens to the voice of a man who himself has hearkened to the voice of God. Let me say that again. God hearkens to the voice of a man who himself has hearkened to the voice of God. It should thrill our souls to realize that the same living God stands ready to help us today to overcome whatever it is in front of us. Our victories may be different in nature, our battles may be different, but nevertheless, he is a great and wonderful God. We too can see great victories if we will obey him, cooperate with him, live with him. The choice is ours. We can live according to our values and depend upon our strength, but we will pay the price. Or we can elect to be faithful to him and discover his faithfulness. He has not changed in all the years of human history. He still is working. the power of prayer. We need to be reminded of the power of prayer. We need to be reminded of the thing, there's nothing too great for God. We need to be reminded that God is with us. We need to be reminded that commitments, if they're not backed up, they don't mean anything. We need to live it. And then we need to be reminded that there's going to be some opposition, some difficulties ahead. But God can work in an amazing way. Father, thank you for this simple time together. Lord, I pray that we would be encouraged by you, that we would remember these things in the days ahead. As I was studying this last week and thinking about this, I was encouraged by this very story and how you worked in Joshua's life and in an amazing way. And Lord, we need to have that time with you, that prayer time. We need to be staying committed to what you're doing in our lives. We need to work and move as you work and move in our lives, Father. Lord, I pray you'd be with your church family tonight. The week ahead holds, who knows? You know, Father. And Lord, I ask you would protect them. You would keep them safe. You would use them to be glorified by you. Lord, I pray that you would provide for their needs and meet it. Lord, I pray you protect their families, encourage them, and strengthen them as they spend time with you this week. In Jesus' name, amen. I sure appreciate your time with us tonight. I'm going to take a couple of announcements, and then we'll finish in a word of prayer.
I get to read the announcements because I can. I don't even know how to make it like exciting. Hey, I am excited about next week, Easter, Resurrection Sunday, and we talked about this morning about how are you going to bring Easter home and what are you going to do in your family to celebrate the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Maybe some of you have young kids and some of you guys have traditions that you guys have done. We have a few traditions that we've done and we might be sharing with you guys. Let you privy to the Wacky Wilson home. So that's just a way to be a testimony to really the online community, is post pictures, be like, here's how we're celebrating Easter today, here's what we're talking about today, here's how we're pointing our children to Jesus, here's how we're pointing our neighbors to Jesus. It's all about giving God the glory through that. Also, the Moval meals, we were able to be involved with that this week, and many of you got to deliver them, which I do know Pastor Danny said he even got to witness to somebody while handing them a bag, and they're allowing us to give people the meals while giving them an invite to our church. So God is using Moval meals to be a blessing to our community. He's had and been in contact with the mayor and had open communication with the mayor, so the mayor knows, hey, if I need somebody to talk to, he's here. And so that's been really exciting for us, because I know some of us miss getting to go out door to door or invite people, and that's a way that we can do that. And then the church yard signs. If you've commented on YouTube or on the Facebook page, we're going to read through and see who did that and see if you signed up. Let us know that you want to sign, and we're going to try and get those in your yards this week. Maybe sneak them in there, ninja style, right?
Yeah.
And then just to encourage you guys just to be a virtual testimony, and by that I mean on the different platforms that we are online, whether that's Facebook or Twitter or whatever, using that opportunity so that people can see Christ through what you post and what you're doing with your family. Am I missing anything?
That's it. You did a wonderful job.
Thank
You're hired.
you. Next time
We
I'll
love
wear a
you. We
tie.
thank you for joining us here tonight. Have a great week. If you need anything, call us, text us, email us, telegraph us, whatever you need to do, and get in a hold of us, and we'll be praying for you. We love and miss you so much. Good night and goodbye.
Good night.